The execution scene across the stars. Aya Carter knelt on the cold metal platform, her wrists bound behind her back. The twin suns of Virex, 9 blazed in the sky, casting harsh shadows over the towering monolithic structures of the Galactic Empire's capital. Billions of citizens lined the streets, their faces cold and emotionless, either out of fear or blind obedience. Trillions more across the galaxy watched the live broadcast, unaware that this moment would mark the beginning of the end. A towering figure stepped forward. High Chancellor Varkos, second only to the Emperor himself. His armored robes shimmered under the sunlight, his reptilian features twisted in mock sympathy. He turned to the holocams that hovered in the air, ensuring that no one would miss a second of what was about to happen. "This human is a terrorist," Varkos declared, his voice amplified across the city. "She has conspired against the Empire, spreading lies of rebellion. Let her death serve as a reminder. The might of the Empire is absolute. No species, no force, no idea will ever defy us and live." Aya remained silent. She had been beaten, dragged through the streets, and paraded like a trophy. But she refused to give them the satisfaction of fear. Her face, streaked with dry blood, held no weakness, only defiance. "Do you have any last words, human?" Varkos sneered, lowering the execution rod, the same weapon that had disintegrated thousands before her, to her chest. Aya took a slow breath and lifted her chin, staring straight into the holocams. "You think killing me will save you?" Her voice, though hoarse, carried through the air with chilling clarity. "You don't understand humans at all. See you soon." For the first time in the Empire's long history, silence settled over the crowd. Varkos scowled. Without another word, he pressed the trigger. A blinding beam of red light struck Aya's chest. For a single heartbeat, she remained kneeling. Then, in an instant, her body was gone, reduced to nothing but particles floating in the wind. The crowd roared in approval. News networks across the Empire broadcasted the event in endless loops. The message was clear: humanity was broken. The last embers of their resistance had been snuffed out. But the Empire had made a fatal mistake. Light years away, aboard the warship Indomitable, Admiral Ethan Carter stood frozen in front of screen. He had known this moment was coming, had prepared for it, but nothing could stop the fire burning in his chest. Aya, his daughter, his only child, gone. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter felt the weight of true, all-consuming rage. But he did not scream. He did not punch the wall or curse the gods. Instead, he turned to his officers, his expression unreadable. "Activate the Avenger Protocol," he said. Gasps echoed through the command deck. Officers stiffened. Some hesitated. Everyone knew what that command meant. "Sir," Captain Lien murmured, "once we activate it, there's no going back." Ethan met her gaze, his voice cold as steel. There was no going back the moment they took her. Captain Lien swallowed, then turned to her station. Avenger Protocol activated. Across the galaxy, hidden human sleeper cells received the signal. Civilian freighters, long believed to be ordinary trade ships, powered up concealed weapons. Encrypted transmissions awakened cybernetic saboteurs embedded deep within the Empire's infrastructure. On occupied worlds, resistance fighters, long waiting for this moment, picked up their weapons. At that very second, another signal pulsed through the vast network of Earth's most classified military project, Legion. Legion was not a man, not a fleet. It was something far worse. A self-learning AI, designed in secret, buried within the Empire's systems for years, waiting. The moment Aya's vitals flatlined, it activated. Within milliseconds, Legion infiltrated Imperial command systems. Starships lost navigation. Defense grids shut down. High-priority targets were marked and relayed to the incoming human fleet. On the Imperial homeworld, Chancellor Varkos barely had time to react before every single alarm across the city blared in unison. Ships exploded in the sky. Communication networks failed. And on the holoscreens that had so proudly displayed Aya's execution, new words flickered to life in blood-red text. Activating retribution. 27 minutes until Imperial collapse. The Empire thought they had destroyed a girl. Instead, they had signed their own death warrant, the fury of a species. The Galactic Empire had ruled for centuries. Its fleets stretched across thousands of systems, its control absolute. No species had ever truly defied it. Until now, the execution of Aya Carter was supposed to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it had done the opposite. At the moment of her death, a silent war machine buried deep within the Empire's infrastructure had awakened. And across the galaxy, humanity's retribution had begun. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Ethan Carter stood unmoving, his hands clasped behind his back. The countdown on the screen read, 23:54 until Imperial collapse. Status report, he said, his voice calm, steady. Captain Lien scanned her displays, her eyes widening at the data streaming in. Sir, Legion has fully infiltrated the Empire systems. We're seeing mass shutdowns, power grids failing, planetary shields collapsing. Their fleets are losing control of their own navigation. Ethan gave a single nod. And our forces? Phase 1 is underway. Sleeper cells have activated in over 300 occupied systems. Rebellions are already spreading. Imperial forces are scrambling, but their command structure is in chaos. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had spent years preparing for this moment, laying the groundwork in silence. Aya had been the catalyst, but the war had been inevitable. Now it was humanity's turn to strike. On the Empire's capital world of Virex, 9, chaos erupted. Citizens screamed as explosions ripped through the sky. Buildings trembled as rebel forces, long thought to be crushed, rose up from underground hideouts. The Emperor's palace, once a symbol of unshakable power, was now under siege. High Chancellor Varkos stumbled into the command center, his scales slick with sweat. "Report," he barked. A trembling officer stammered, "We don't know what's happening, Chancellor. Our defense grids are offline. Our fleets, as some of them are attacking each other. It's like something is inside our systems." Varkos snarled, "Impossible. Humanity doesn't have this kind of power." But the truth was undeniable. The Empire was crumbling, and they had no idea how to stop it. At the same time, deep in Imperial space, the largest war fleet in history emerged from the void. Hundreds of Earth warships, long thought to be non-existent, came into view, sleek, deadly, and far more advanced than anything the Empire had ever faced. At the center of the formation was the Indomitable, its massive hull gleaming with plasma artillery primed for battle. Admiral Carter stood before the holo display, where real-time images of the battlefield unfolded. The Imperial Grand Armada, the pride of the Empire, was already in disarray. Some ships were drifting, others self-destructing as Legion hijacked their controls. They were fish in a barrel. "Begin the assault," Ethan ordered. The fleet obeyed. Human warships unleashed hell. Railguns punched through Imperial hulls. Swarms of AI-guided missiles ripped through command centers. Plasma beams cut through the void, slicing apart ships that had once terrorized the galaxy. In mere minutes, what had been the most feared fleet in the known universe was reduced to burning wreckage. Back on Virex, 9, the Emperor himself stood at the balcony of his palace, watching in horror as his empire collapsed. This was not just a battle. It was annihilation. He turned to his advisors, his voice shaking. "We must escape. Gather the High Council. Prepare the Exodus fleet." But before anyone could move, the palace doors exploded inward. Storming through the smoke was a battalion of human soldiers, their armor gleaming with the insignia of Earth's elite Valkyrie Corps. At their head was Commander Helen Drake, her rifle still smoking from the blast. She locked eyes with the Emperor. "Your reign is over." The Emperor backed away, his mind racing. He had ruled for decades. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy. How had it come to this? Then he saw the holoscreen behind her. The words burned into his vision. 1207 until Imperial collapse. Aya Carter had been one girl, one death, but she had been the spark that set the galaxy ablaze. And now, The Empire was only minutes away from extinction. 27 minutes of destruction. 1206 until Imperial collapse. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire had ruled for nearly a century. He had crushed rebellions, enslaved entire species, and obliterated fleets that dared to oppose him. He believed himself untouchable. Now, as he watched his capital burn, he realized how wrong he had been. The sky above Virex 9 was a battlefield of fire and wreckage. Earth's fleet had broken through planetary defenses like a hammer through glass. Imperial warships, once symbols of dominance, now drifted as shattered husks. The Emperor clenched his fists, his golden robes billowing in the hot winds of destruction. His advisors cowered before him, waiting for orders. "Summon the royal guard," he barked. "We are leaving." A trembling officer stammered, "Sire, the Exodus fleet, it's gone." The Emperor's blood ran cold. "What?" "Their engines, disabled, sabotaged. The moment we tried to launch, they turned to dust." The officer's voice cracked. "They hacked our ships before we even boarded." The Emperor's mind reeled. This wasn't just an attack. It was systematic, planned, executed with a precision beyond anything he had ever seen. And it was happening too fast to stop. 742 until Imperial collapse. High above, the war in space was already over. Admiral Ethan Carter watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Indomitable. The Galactic Empire's Grand Armada, the largest war fleet ever assembled, was now nothing more than debris scattering across the void. Some of their ships had tried to run. They never made it. Legion had turned their own navigational systems against them, sending them careening into asteroids or locking them into point-blank kill zones. It was absolute, merciless annihilation. "Sir," Captain Lien called from her station, "we're receiving multiple distress signals from Imperial ships. They're begging for surrender." Ethan didn't flinch. "Deny them." A hush fell over the bridge. "Sir, no survivors," Ethan said coldly. "They didn't spare Aya. They don't get the luxury of surrender." The order was carried out without hesitation. One by one, the remaining Imperial ships were wiped from existence. Humanity wasn't here to negotiate. This was extermination. 315 until Imperial collapse. On the surface of Virex 9, chaos reigned. The Resistance, made up of humans, former Imperial slaves, and long-oppressed species, had seized control of the city. Fires raged through the streets, and Imperial soldiers, once feared enforcers, were being hunted down like prey. In the palace courtyard, Commander Helen Drake led her squad through the shattered remains of the Emperor's last line of defense. The once glorious palace, a structure that had stood for centuries, was now crumbling under the weight of orbital bombardments. Drake activated her comms. "Admiral, we've located the Emperor. He's trying to escape through the underground tunnels." "Cut him off," Ethan replied. "End this." Drake didn't need to be told twice. Her squad moved fast, sealing off exits, flushing out guards, pushing deeper into the tunnels. The Emperor had nowhere left to run. 047 until Imperial collapse. The Emperor stumbled in the final chamber of his escape route, a hidden hangar beneath the palace. A single ship remained. If he could just reach it. A sharp, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "You cannot escape." The lights flickered. Holoscreens came alive with a single red sigil. Legion. The Emperor's breath hitched. No, this is impossible. "You have ruled through fear," Legion intoned, "but today fear belongs to you." The doors behind him slammed open. Commander Drake entered, rifle raised. Her squad followed, weapons trained. Behind them, a live holocron hovered, broadcasting everything to the galaxy, just as the Empire had done with Aya's execution. The Emperor fell to his knees, his eyes darting wildly. "Please, we can negotiate. You need me alive." Drake gave him the same cold look he had given Aya. "No," she said. "We don't." The last thing the Emperor saw was the execution rod, the same one used on Aya, pointed at his chest. The trigger was pulled. A flash of red light. And just like that, the Galactic Empire ceased to exist. The age of humanity begins. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had loomed over the galaxy like an unbreakable titan. Its fleets had crushed countless civilizations, its laws enforced through terror, its rulers believing they would reign forever. It took only 27 minutes to erase them from existence. Midnight. The Empire has fallen. The execution of the Emperor was broadcast across every imperial world, every occupied colony, every warship still floating aimlessly in space. The same holoscreens that had once displayed Aya Carter's death now showed the moment their ruler turned to dust. And then, silence. For the first time in centuries, there was no command, no orders, no empire. The people of the galaxy, those who had lived under the boot of oppression for generations, stared at their screens, processing the impossible truth. Then the uprisings truly began. On once loyal imperial worlds, statues of the Emperor were toppled, his banners torn down and burned. Slave worlds rose in rebellion, shackled species taking up arms against their former masters. Imperial governors, left without fleets to protect them, were overrun by the very people they had once ruled. The Empire's vast military-industrial complex ground to a halt. With legions still embedded in their systems, any attempt to regroup was impossible. Human warships patrolled the void, ensuring that no remnants could escape. The war wasn't just over. It had been erased from possibility. The Indomitable, hours later, Admiral Ethan Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the holomap of the galaxy shift in real time. Systems that had been marked as Imperial territory were turning neutral, then aligning with the rebellion. The once unified empire was dissolving before his eyes. The victory was absolute. Captain Lien approached, her voice subdued. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from dozens of worlds. They're asking what happens next." Ethan exhaled, his expression unreadable. He had spent years planning this war. He had devoted every waking moment to vengeance. And now that it was over, what came next? He looked down at the small hollow emitter in his hand. A flickering image of Aya appeared, her last recorded message before she had been captured. "You always said humans weren't conquerors, Dad. So when we win, and I know we will, promise me something. Don't replace them. Be better." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his resolve was clear. "Send a message to every world in the former empire," he said. "Tell them humanity does not seek to rule. There will be no new empire in our name. We offer alliance, protection, and the right to govern themselves." Captain Lien nodded, relief flashing across her face. "And if they refuse, then we leave them be," Ethan said. "We didn't fight this war to take their freedom, only to ensure no one else takes it from them again." She smiled. "Understood, sir." Ethan turned back to the viewport, staring into the vastness of space. Aya had been right. Humanity had won, but their true legacy would not be in destruction. It would be in what they built next. The monument of Aya Carter 1 year later. The world of Virex 9, once the heart of the Galactic Empire, had been transformed. Where the Emperor's palace had once stood, now there was something new. A monument. It was not a statue of a warrior, nor a symbol of vengeance. Instead, it was a simple figure, a young girl, standing with her hands clasped behind her, her gaze set toward the stars. Aya Carter. Her final words had become the rallying cry of the new Galactic Union. "You don't understand humans at all." They did now.